She thought I was miles away. Another long day at the office, another night spent behind spreadsheets and meetings. That's what she told her friends, anyway. What she didn't know was that I'd left work early, a quiet decision made between one heartbeat and the next. Something in her voice that morning had been off, too bright, too rehearsed. So I drove home, parking a street away, watching the house that had once felt like mine. And that's when I saw it. The flicker of her silhouette through the window, laughter I hadn't heard in months, a man's jacket draped across the back of my chair. My pulse slowed instead of racing. Because in that moment, clarity hurts less than suspicion. She thought I was at work. She didn't know I was standing behind her the whole time, watching the truth unfold in the place we once called love. I'd never been the jealous type. At least, that's what I told myself for years. But lately, the little things had started to feel louder. The way she'd guard her phone when it buzzed, how her laughter had become quieter, controlled, almost edited. Her name is Claire. We've been married 9 years. Not perfect years, but real ones. We'd built a life brick by brick. 2 jobs, 1 mortgage, and a shared dream of someday starting a family once things settled down. But somewhere between promotions and exhaustion, we'd become polite strangers who shared toothpaste and silence. That morning, she'd kiss me goodbye like always, a peck on the cheek, coffee in hand, her perfume lingering just long enough to make me think everything was fine. But it wasn't. Something in the way she said, "Don't be late tonight," felt rehearsed, almost too casual. So at lunch, instead of heading to my meeting downtown, I turned the car toward home. The drive felt endless. The closer I got, the louder my thoughts became. What exactly did I expect to find? Maybe nothing. Maybe everything. Our house sat at the end of a quiet cul-de-sac. The kind where nothing dramatic ever happened, where every lawn looked identical and every neighbor waved just enough to hide their curiosity. Her car was in the driveway. Odd. She wasn't supposed to be home. I parked a street away, heart hammering, palms slick. My rational side whispered, "You're overreacting." But instinct, that sharp, unwelcome thing we call intuition, told me otherwise. I walked up the sidewalk quietly, the crunch of gravel under my shoes sounding deafening. Through the front window, I saw her, back turned, phone in hand, smiling. A real smile. The kind I hadn't seen in months. And then I saw him. A man sitting on our couch, his posture casual, his expression comfortable, too comfortable. His jacket hung over the chair I always sat in, his shoes near the door like he belonged there. Claire laughed again, tossing her hair. He reached out, brushed her arm. My stomach turned cold. I should have stormed in. That's what people do in movies. Confront, accuse, explode. But I didn't. I just watched. Maybe it was disbelief. Maybe it was heartbreak disguised as calm. I stood there for what felt like hours, the world narrowing to the sound of her voice. She was telling him about a new beginning, about how he won't suspect a thing. The man laughed, leaned closer. I couldn't hear every word, but I heard enough. And then, as if fate wanted to twist the knife, she glanced at the clock. "Ben will be home around 6, she said softly. "We got time. My name, my wife, my house." And I was the intruder in all 3. The logical part of my brain screamed to walk away, to leave, to breathe, to wait until the emotions caught up with the evidence. But something else took over. Not rage, not revenge, just stillness. I circled around the side of the house. The patio door was slightly open, typical Claire, always forgetting to lock it. I slipped inside, the scent of her perfume mixing with something alien, cologne, spicy and sharp. Their laughter floated from the living room. "Maybe next week," she was saying, "once the paperwork clears." I froze. Paperwork? My pulse quickened. She wasn't just cheating. She was planning something. I took a step closer, the floor creaking softly. The man's voice dropped low. "You're sure he won't notice?" She chuckled. "Ben doesn't even check the joint account. He's too busy at work." A chill went through me. They weren't just sharing secrets. They were using me. I don't know how long I stood there before I spoke. It wasn't planned, just instinct, like the body deciding to breathe after drowning too long. "You're right," I said quietly. "Ben's been too busy." Claire froze mid-laugh. Her head turned slowly, eyes wide, the color draining from her face as she saw me standing in the doorway. Still calm, heartbreak hidden behind a steady voice. The man jumped to his feet. "Jesus." "Sit down," I said. He hesitated. I took one step closer. I said, "Sit down." Something in my tone made him obey. Claire's voice broke the silence. "Ben, I can explain." "Then start." She glanced at the man, then at me, panic flickering across her face. "It's not what it looks like." I almost laughed. "Claire, please don't insult both of us. You're better than cliches." Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. The man, mid-30s, confident, expensive watch, tried to stand again. "Look, man, maybe we should just—" "Shut up." He did. Claire took a shaky breath. "I didn't mean for you to find out like this." I tilted my head. "Meaning you did mean for me to find out, just differently?" Her eyes filled with tears. "No, that's not." "Then what is it?" The silence stretched. Finally, she said, "It's about the house." I frowned. "The house." She nodded quickly, desperate. "We were refinancing. The agent needed a co-signer." "Don't lie." Her lip trembled. And that's when the man spoke again. "She's telling the truth." I looked at him, calm, deliberate. "You want to tell me your name before I call the police?" He hesitated. "I'm Mark. I'm her financial advisor." "Financial advisor," I repeated slowly. "That what they call it now?" Claire whispered, "Ben, please." I stepped closer until I was standing behind her. She flinched, not because I'd touched her, but because I hadn't. "You know what the worst part is?" I said quietly. "It's not that you lied. It's that you made me feel crazy for noticing." Her tears finally fell. "Ben, I'm sorry." "No," I said, voice shaking now. "You don't get to say that yet." The man stood up, straightening his jacket. "I think I should go." "Good idea," I said. He started toward the door, but I stepped aside, blocking his path just long enough for him to understand that if he ever came back, he wouldn't leave as easily. When the door shut behind him, the house felt heavier than ever. Claire sank onto the couch, covering her face. I stayed standing, hands trembling, trying to make sense of the last 10 minutes that had just rewritten our entire marriage. Finally, she whispered, "It started after the miscarriage." My breath caught. "I was lost," she said, tears streaming. "You buried yourself in work and I didn't know how to talk to you." He was there. "It wasn't supposed to be anything, Ben. I swear." Her words hit me like glass, sharp, messy, cutting in places I didn't know were still open. I wanted to scream, to demand why this was her way of coping. But all I said was, "You should have let me grieve with you." She sobbed. I didn't know how. I walked to the door, my heart feeling both hollow and heavy. She stood, desperate. "Where are you going?" "To work," I said. "For real this time." And then, quietly, before I closed the door, "Next time you hear the door open, Claire, don't assume it's just me coming home. It might be the truth walking in." I didn't actually go back to work that night. I drove until the streetlights blurred, until the anger dulled just enough to think. When betrayal hits, you want noise, shouting, breaking, anything to match the chaos inside. But silence is sharper. It forces you to see things clearly. By the time I reached the office, it was empty. The hum of the air conditioning filled the corridors, sterile and cold. I sat at my desk, staring at the computer, replaying everything she'd said. "It's about the house. He's my financial advisor. I didn't know how to talk to you." Every line was a thread that didn't connect. So I opened my work laptop, logged into the joint bank account, and started scrolling through the statements. I hadn't checked them in months. She'd always handled bills, mortgage, taxes. "You focus on your career," she used to say. "I've got the rest." She wasn't wrong. She had everything, and I'd given it to her. The numbers told their own story. Transfers, small at first, then larger. Regular payments to an account I didn't recognize. The name listed was M. Harlan. Mark. My hand trembled. For months, money had been bleeding out of our lives quietly, systematically, hidden under vague labels like consulting and legal fees. I stared at the total. Nearly $68,000 gone. It wasn't just an affair. It was embezzlement of trust, of time, of everything I'd worked for. And suddenly, everything she'd said earlier made perfect sense. The paperwork, The he won't notice. The laughter. They weren't just lying. They were planning. I opened the office drawer and pulled out the small black recorder I kept for meetings. It was an old habit from years in business. Never trust what isn't written or recorded. I sat back in the chair and pressed the red button, the tiny light glowing faintly. Entry 1, I said quietly. October 5th, subject, Claire and Mark. And just like that, I began documenting everything. The dates, the withdrawals, the lies. It wasn't revenge I wanted anymore. It was proof. Over the next few days, I became someone else, calm, calculating, detached. At home, I barely spoke to her. When I did, it was mechanical, polite smiles, short answers, dinner without conversation. She noticed. She always had that sixth sense, the way women do when the balance of power shifts without warning. Are you okay? She asked one night, her voice careful. I nodded. Just tired. She smiled weakly, relieved, the kind of smile people wear when they think they've gotten away with something. That night, when she showered, I placed a second recorder under the living room shelf. Not because I wanted to catch her, but because I knew I would. By Thursday, I had hours of recordings, muffled phone calls, quiet conversations, half arguments with a voice that wasn't mine. But one clip changed everything. It was Friday afternoon. I left my phone accidentally on the kitchen counter, recording. When I came home later, I played it back. Her voice was soft. I transferred the rest. He won't notice for another week. Then Mark's voice. Good. Once it's done, we can leave this town behind. Claire laughed. And leave him behind too. My throat tightened. Then Mark said something that made my blood run cold. Just remember what we agreed. You file first. The account has to stay in your name until the settlement clears. Don't worry, she said. By the time he finds out, I'll have the house and half his salary. There was a pause. Then laughter. Soft, cruel, familiar. That night, I didn't sleep. I just sat in the dark, staring at her beside me. She looked peaceful, content, like someone who'd already moved on from a life she hadn't finished destroying yet. In another lifetime, I might have cried. But now, I just watched her breathe, and all I felt was clarity. I had the truth. Now, I just needed the right way to deliver. The next morning, I woke early, pretending to get ready for work. I brewed coffee, packed my briefcase, the normal routine that kept her illusions intact. As I walked out the door, she called from the kitchen, "Don't forget dinner tonight. My mom's coming." I smiled. Wouldn't miss it. But I had no intention of coming back for dinner. I spent the day with a lawyer. His name was James Whitaker, the kind of man who spoke in measured tones and wore glasses that made him look perpetually unimpressed. When I finished explaining, he leaned back. "You're certain about the recordings?" "Yes, every word." He nodded slowly. "Then you have leverage. Enough to protect your assets, your house, and frankly, your dignity." "Can I file first?" I asked, a hint of a smile. "You'll do more than that." He explained the process, the frozen accounts, the property injunction, the formal notice that would hit her like a thunderclap. By the time she realized what had happened, everything she thought she'd taken from me would already belong to the court. That evening, I drove home earlier than usual, early enough to see her car gone from the driveway. Predictable. Inside, the house felt cleaner, quieter, as if it had finally started rejecting the lies it had been forced to hold. I poured a drink, sat at the table, and waited. Hours later, headlights swept across the living room wall. She walked in, humming softly, carrying groceries. "Hey," she said casually, "you're home early." "Yeah," I replied. "Had to take care of something." She froze slightly, just for a second, then smiled. "Everything okay?" "Perfect," I said. "By the way, you might want to check your email." She frowned and set the bags down. "Why?" I nodded toward her phone. "Just check." She sighed, unlocking it. Her face changed almost immediately. Confusion, then panic. "What is this?" she whispered. "Divorce papers," I said. "Filed this morning." "Oh, and notice of financial investigation. You want to forward that to your advisor." Her hand trembled. "You can't." "I can," I said quietly. And I did. She looked up at me, eyes wide with shock. "You recorded us?" "Every word." She stared at me like I was someone she didn't recognize, and maybe I wasn't. "You think this makes you the hero?" She snapped suddenly, anger replacing fear. No, I said, just the one who finally stopped being the fool. Her voice cracked. Ben, please. I made a mistake. No, I said again, sharper this time. You made choices. Silence. Then she whispered, what now? Now, I said, standing. Now you pack your things. The lawyer said, you can stay until the weekend. After that, the locks change. Her tears came fast this time. Ben, I never meant to. Don't. I interrupted. You meant every bit of it. You just didn't expect to get caught. I walked toward the door, pausing only once before leaving. You should have known, I said softly. I don't work late on Fridays. And then I stepped out into the cool night, into the sound of my own freedom. For a week, I thought it was over. The papers were filed. The accounts were frozen. The truth, finally, had been set free like a bird too long caged. Claire moved out quietly, a box at a time. No screaming matches, no melodrama, just the quiet surrender of two people who'd run out of things to say. She left the key on the kitchen counter and texted once. I'm sorry. I hope someday you'll remember the good parts. I read it twice, then deleted it. I want to feel peace. But something still felt off. Even after everything, the recordings, the money trail, the lawyer, a question gnawed at me. Why did she seem so calm? You don't lose everything and walk away that quietly, unless you think you're still holding a card that no one else knows about. I tried to bury the thought, but it wouldn't leave me alone. One night, I poured myself a drink and started scrolling through the shared cloud drive we use for tax files and photos. Mostly boring folders labeled receipts, insurance, mortgage docs. Then I saw one I didn't recognize, Blue Harbor. It was password protected. My pulse quickened. Blue Harbor was the name of a beach town 3 hours away. The same one Claire and I had visited years ago. She used to say it was our escape. I tried our wedding date. Denied. Her birthday. Denied. Then, on a whim, I typed in Mark. Access granted. Inside was a single PDF titled Transfer Agreement. It was a contract dated 2 months earlier, authorizing a real estate transfer of our lake cabin to Blue Harbor Development, LLC. The signature at the bottom wasn't hers. It was mine, except I hadn't signed it. I felt the blood drain from my face. They'd forged my signature. The cabin wasn't much, a small place I'd inherited from my father, but it was the one thing in my name alone. The one thing untouched by the marriage. And they'd stolen it. My hands shook as I scrolled through the pages. Attached was a wire transfer receipt, $210,000 to an offshore account. Not Claire's, not Mark's. A third name, Harper and Associates Holdings. I didn't know the name, but I knew the game. And suddenly, I realized this wasn't about love or betrayal or marriage. It was about money. I hadn't just been cheated on. I've been played. I called my lawyer first thing the next morning. When I told him what I'd found, there was a long pause. Then he said, you need to come in. Now, by the time I reached his office, he already had files printed. Harper and Associates, he said, is a shell company. No real offices, no employees. Just a few registered transactions under different names. But guess who's listed as their managing consultant? I said nothing. He slid the page toward me. Mark Harlan, your wife's so-called financial advisor. James leaned forward. You caught one piece of it, but I think it goes deeper. He's been targeting clients through your wife's firm, couples mostly, uses the spouse to gain trust, forges paperwork, drains assets, and disappears before anyone realizes it. My mind raced. So Claire wasn't the only one. He shook his head. Probably not. But she might have been the only one who thought it was love. That hit harder than I expected. She's complicit, I said, more to convince myself. Maybe, he said. But if you want justice, we can't assume. We need proof she knew what she was part of. I nodded. Then I'll get it. That night, I made a call to a friend named Cal, an old co-worker from my IT days. He owed me a favor, and he was the kind of person who could find anyone, anywhere quietly. Need a location trace, I told him. Name's Mark Harlan. Might be using aliases, Harper, H. Andrews, maybe Blue Harbor. He didn't ask questions. Give me 24 hours. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Claire's face, not crying, not angry, just knowing. Like she'd been waiting for me to figure out. By morning, Cal texted back. Got a hit. He's still in the state. Checked into Harbor Suites, Blue Harbor. Room 302. Of course. The same name. The same town. Some people hide behind lies. Others hide in plain sight. I didn't tell my lawyer. Didn't tell anyone. I just drove. 3 hours later, I was standing in the parking lot of the Seaside Motel, cheap neon flickering above me. The ocean roared nearby, restless and dark, fitting for what I was about to do. I went to the front desk, pretending to be friendly. "Looking for my brother," I said casually. "He checked in yesterday." "Mark Harlan?" The clerk nodded. "Room 302. He's been here all week." "Perfect." I slipped the recorder into my jacket pocket, checked the battery, then climbed the stairs. Outside his door, I paused, listening. Voices. A woman's voice. Claire's. She was there. Of course she was. I pressed record and knocked. The door opened a few inches. Mark appeared, startled, then instantly calculating. "Ben," he said smoothly. "Didn't expect." "Move," I said. He hesitated. I pushed past him. Claire stood by the window, pale and shaking. "Ben," she whispered. "What are you?" "Quiet," I said. She froze. Mark tried to recover his composure. "If you've come to threaten us again, I'll call security." I laughed low cold. "You might want to hear the terms before you do." I pulled out the recorder and set it on the table. The red light blinked softly. "Let's talk about Blue Harbor," I said. For the first time, I saw fear cross his face. Claire blinked. "Blue Harbor? What are you talking about?" "Don't," I said. "Not this time. You forged my signature. Sold my father's cabin. Wired the money offshore. I've got the documents. The only thing I need now is your voice confirming it." She looked between us, confused. "Mark, what is he saying?" He stayed silent, calculating. "Tell her," I said. "Ben," he started, his tone shifting into that practice calm. "You're mistaken. Your wife had nothing to do with." I cut him off. "You should be careful, Mark. The recorder's live." His expression cracked. Just for a second. That was all I needed. Claire turned to him, her voice trembling. "What's he talking about?" "Mark, what did you do?" He didn't answer. "Mark," she shouted. And then she saw it, the open briefcase on the bed, filled with cash, passports, documents. Her knees buckled. "Oh my God." I took a slow breath. "You were just another name on his list, Claire. I wasn't the only one being played." She shook her head violently. "No, no. He said we were. He said." Mark grabbed her arm. "Enough. Let go of me," she screamed. That's when I stepped forward. "You heard her." He turned, eyes cold. "You think this changes anything? You don't have proof." I smiled faintly. "Actually, I do." I pulled out my phone and hit play, the recording from that night in the kitchen. His voice. Her voice. Every word. He froze. "Funny thing about people who think they're smarter than everyone else," I said softly. "They always forget the quiet ones are listening." He lunged for the recorder. I stepped back. Claire screamed. The fight was short, clumsy, desperate. He swung. I dodged. The recorder hit the floor, still blinking. When it was over, Mark was face down, hands behind his back, Claire crying in the corner. I called the police, gave them everything, the documents, the signatures, the recordings. When they led him away, he looked at me once, smirking through the blood on his lip. "You think this ends with me?" I met his gaze. "No, but it ends for you." When it was done, I walked out into the cold ocean wind. Claire followed me, eyes red, voice shaking. "Ben, I didn't know," she whispered. "I swear to you, I didn't know." I looked at her for a long time. "I believe you," I said finally. "But that doesn't change anything." She sobbed. "What happens now?" "You go your way," I said quietly. "And I go mine." She reached out. "Please, Ben." I stepped back. "You thought I was at work that day," I said softly. "But I was standing right behind you. I saw everything. And that's the moment you stopped being mine." Then I turned and walked away, letting the sea wind carry away whatever was left of us. The next few weeks felt like waking up from a nightmare you weren't sure was real. Police reports, court hearings, lawyers, every detail dragged me back into the wreckage of what used to be my life. Mark's arrest made headlines in small local papers. Financial advisor arrested in multi-state fraud scheme. Authorities confirm multiple victims targeted through emotional manipulation and falsified documents. It turned out he'd done it at least 4 times before. Charming spouses, forging signatures, draining accounts, and vanishing before the pieces fit together. This time, he hadn't made it out. When detectives asked how I'd known, I told them the truth. I stopped believing what I wanted to hear and started listening to what I couldn't ignore. Claire cooperated. Her statement confirmed everything. How she'd been promised a future, how she'd signed papers she didn't read, how she believed every practiced word. The police cleared her of criminal involvement. But innocence doesn't erase damage. One afternoon, she came to the house. I almost didn't answer the door. She stood there in the same raincoat she'd worn the first day we met, a detail that hurt more than it should have. "Can I come in?" she asked quietly. I hesitated, then stepped aside. The house smelled like coffee and sawdust. I'd started renovating, trying to scrub her memory out of the walls. She looked around, eyes soft. "You kept the place." "It's mine," I said simply. She nodded, taking it in. "I read the news. About Mark." "Yeah. Did you know he used my name on another account?" she whispered. "He didn't just lie to you, Ben. He lied to me too." For the first time, I saw her not as the woman who'd betrayed me, but as someone who'd been broken by the same lie, just from the other side of it. "I thought I was in control," she said. "I thought I was getting away with something. But he was getting away with me." I didn't answer. There was nothing left to say. She pulled something from her bag, a small envelope. "I sold the car," she said softly. "It's not much, but I wanted to pay back what I could." I pushed it back toward her. "Keep it." Her eyes filled. "Why?" "Because this isn't about money anymore. You already paid more than enough." Tears slipped down her cheeks. "Do you hate me?" I thought about it, really thought about it. The nights I'd stayed awake staring at the ceiling. The recording that played in my head on repeat. The day I watched her walk away with someone else's smile. "No," I said finally. "I don't hate you. I just don't know who you are anymore." She nodded slowly. "Neither do I." For a long moment, silence filled the space between us. Not angry or heavy, just finished. Before she left, she paused at the doorway. "You were always good to me, Ben," she said. "You deserved better." I looked at her, really looked, the woman I'd built a life with, the one I'd loved enough to lose myself for. "I did," I said quietly. "But sometimes you have to lose everything to realize what you deserve." And that was the last time I saw her. The weeks turned into months. The court awarded me the house, full financial restitution, and a symbolic settlement from Mark's assets. Not that I care about the money anymore. What mattered was the stillness that finally settled over my life. Not peace exactly, but a clean kind of silence. The kind that comes after a storm when the debris is gone and all that's left is air. I rebuilt slowly, fixed the fence, sold the cabin's empty lot, started jogging again, not to escape, but to move forward. Every once in a while, I'd think about that moment, standing behind her, watching my life unravel in real time. And oddly enough, it didn't hurt anymore. It felt like closure, because seeing the truth, no matter how painful, had freed me from pretending. Then one morning, months later, I got a call. Unknown number. "Mr. Walker," a woman's voice said. "This is Detective Cole. We wanted to inform you that Mark Harlan entered a plea deal. He'll serve 8 years minimum." "Good," I said. She hesitated. "There's something else. He requested to send a letter to you. We need your consent." I paused. "Why?" "He said it concerns your wife." I agreed. 2 days later, the envelope arrived, unmarked except for my name. The handwriting was neat, controlled. I opened it. "Ben, I suppose this is the part where I apologize, though I doubt you'll believe me. I didn't set out to destroy your life. People like me rarely plan the destruction. We just step into opportunities and forget that they belong to real people. Claire was never meant to be part of it. I was going to cut her out before you found out, but she believed in me in a way I hadn't seen in years. Maybe that's why I stayed longer than I should have. I don't expect forgiveness. But if you see her again, tell her she wasn't just another name on a list. Somewhere between the lies, she started to matter." I read it twice, then folded it back into the envelope. It didn't feel like closure. It felt like a confession too late to matter. Still, a strange part of me felt lighter. Not because I forgave him, but because I finally understood something. People lie for 3 reasons. To protect themselves, to get what they want, or because they've forgotten how to tell the truth. Mark had done all three. That night, I sat on the porch watching the sunset bleed across the horizon. The same porch where I'd once stood waiting for Claire to come home. The same house where I'd watched everything fall apart. And for the first time, I felt grateful. Not for what had happened, but for surviving it. Because betrayal isn't the end of a story. It's the start of a new one. The next morning, I packed a small bag and drove to Blue Harbor. Not for revenge, not to relive it, but to reclaim it. The ocean looked different now, calmer, like even it had moved on. I stood there for hours, the wind in my face, the sound of waves washing away every version of myself I no longer needed. As the sun dipped low, my phone buzzed. Unknown number again. I almost didn't answer. Then a voice I hadn't heard in months said softly, "Ben?" It was Claire. I didn't speak. I just wanted to say, "Thank you," she whispered, "for not destroying me when you could have." I closed my eyes. "You did that yourself, Claire." "I know," she said, "but I'm trying to fix what's left. I'm in therapy. I'm working again. I just needed you to know I'm sorry." There was a pause. "I forgive you," I said finally, "but that doesn't mean I want you back." "I know," she said, her voice breaking. "I just wanted to hear your voice one last time." Then the line went silent. I stood there for a long time, the sea wind cutting through the stillness. In that moment, I realized something simple. The pain wasn't a punishment. It was proof that I'd cared deeply enough to be hurt and strong enough to move on. As the sky turned to gold, I smiled faintly. She thought I was at work that day, but I was standing behind her the whole time, watching the truth reveal itself, watching my old life crumble. And maybe, just maybe, that was the only way I could finally see who I really was.